My writing under the Write-A-Thon online program of Clarion West has been going swimmingly for the most part. Here is how my June 26 went, as written down on the tracking page of my planner. Early that morning, I was able to make part 2 of this vlog series on my YouTube channel about the Write-A-Thon, and I will link that vlog down below. And for the rest of the day, I worked on my novel. I was also able to attend an online writing session with JD Harlock, and the writing prompts were so interesting. I've never written using those prompts before, and there were 3 different prompts. The writing session was only for an hour, but at the end of it, I had the beginning of 3 stories that I can continue at a later date. By 9 o'clock that evening, I was able to add a little bit more to chapter 10. Here are my notes for chapters 10 to 13, which is the entire act 3 of my novel, and I needed to redo the plotting, and I redid the plotting of that. And here are my running notes on the novel, the things that I have to keep in mind so that the details of the story will be consistent all throughout the book. Act 3 of any story is really the most fast-paced because that's where everything should come to a close. Everything that you have started and built up on Act 1 and Act 2 must come to the most logical conclusion in Act 3. And I know how my Act 3 will be. I know what will happen in chapters 10, 11, 12, and 13. I know exactly what's going to happen, but of course, I have to write it. And I did, I tried, but I could not write anymore. I could not even think, so I decided that it might be a good time to take a break. I used the time to make a couple of notebooks. This is a notebook that uses the mica onion skin paper that is 40 GSM. This is fountain pen friendly, very beautiful paper. This notebook that I'm making in this video clip at the moment will have 1008 pages. And while making notebooks, I usually watch movies or TV shows. Here is CSI. I am finally on season 5. That's the only way I can watch movies and TV shows really if I'm multitasking. Otherwise, I have no time to watch them. On June 27 at 2 a.m., I had a lecture on character building with Jeffrey Lee Chatham II, and here are my notes. It was such a fun class, and there was a lot of sharing of books and novels and movies in which the characters were developed very well, or the characters were very complicated, and also where the characters were not very well developed and how it could have been improved, things like that. That class was held at 2 a.m. until 3 a.m. Philippine time. And after the class, I continued with making the notebooks while watching CSI because I really wanted that break from writing my novel. And later on that day, I was also able to run some errands. On the 28th, I had no appetite. I was feeling sick. Maybe I really needed that break after all. But before midnight on that day, here's what I've done so far. Even though I was not feeling well, I was still able to work on chapter 10 of my novel, which was proving to be difficult, maybe just as difficult as chapter 7 was. And I also ran out for quick errands because I needed the break. I needed to get out of my room. And here is chapter 10 as it stood at that moment with 2,700 words. And I was also able to edit some of the earlier chapters, so the full working draft is now at 41,300 words. Some of the chapters became slightly longer, so I adjusted my running tally of the word count for each chapter. Chapters 7, 8, and 9 became slightly longer, but at this point they are more or less final, but not completely locked down, but they are final. And then I remembered that I could put my schedule from my Google Calendar as a complication on my Apple Watch. So I did that, and that's the icon on the lower left corner of the watch face. And this is so that I won't have to rely on the sound of my computer whenever a class is coming up, because sometimes I put my computer to sleep. That space used to be for my heart rate, but for now the classes are more urgent. And besides, I haven't been getting panic attacks lately, so yay! And for one of the recurring events, I actually got the time and date wrong because Pacific Standard is now Pacific Daylight. And this class was created later on when Pacific Standard was already Pacific Daylight. So I thought I had a 3 p.m. class on June 28th, but turns out that was for the next day. But I was able to write over 600 words for chapter 10 of my novel and also finalized the replotting of my Act 3, which is chapters 10 through 13. And as for the other work that remains for chapter 10, I would not be able to do that day, so I transferred the sticky notes to the next day. Chapter 10 should have around 4,800 words in total, and that was my plan for June 29. When June 29 came, I was productive during the wee hours of the morning as usual. I wrote chapter 10 and I also attended a sprint writing class, the one that I thought was for 3 p.m. the previous day. So that was the class. But then I started writing chapter 12. That was not the chapter that was scheduled to be written that day, but there was one scene in chapter 12 that was very vivid in my mind, so I had to write it. I also used chapter 12 as my writing exercise for the online writing sprint, which, by the way, was led by Alex Morrissey. And this is my chapter 12, which at past 5 a.m. on June 29 had almost 1,000 words. Chapter 10 had 2,800 words at this point, and I even put a note right there on the file that at the end of the day, the chapter 10 must have 3,400 words. Did I end up doing that? Nope. On June 30, I had this really interesting class with Tara Campbell. It's called A Little Weird Goes a Long Way. It was very funny too, and at the end of the class, I had the beginning of at least one story that I can continue writing on a different day. But I wasn't feeling well, you guys. I didn't even have that much of an appetite because I was having menstrual cramps. It was hard to sit up at my desk. I could not bring my laptop to bed because it needs an external monitor, which I could not bring to bed. So I figured maybe this was the universe telling me to take a break, take a break. So that's what I did. All day, June 30, I was taking a break. But I did get out of bed at 9:30 in the evening, and what I did was I transferred all of the remaining work onto the front of my monitor, as you can see here. These were the same sticky notes that were on the Kanban board that I did. I'll leave a link to the video down below. And I kept transferring these on the pages of my planner across the days as I went along. I feel that the writing of all of these remaining 4 chapters will not be in the proper sequence. I'm only about halfway through chapter 10, which is still not moving at 2,800 words, but I am also 1,500 words into chapter 12. Whatever works, I'll just go with it. Like I mentioned in a previous vlog, I do not question my writing process. And that same night, I also thought of a good closing sentence for chapter 11.